that means also being able to work on a phone or a tablet, some sort of a portable device. So this is it's a really important topic, and it's definitely a method that should be on your radar going into next year as a way to reduce business risk. So as you might have seen on the slide there just before a moment ago, we will be recording this today, so everyone can get a copy of this afterwards, as well as those that weren't able to make it or were running late. So a little bit about me. As you can see on this slide here, I started with IT Smart Solutions nearly 3 years ago in more of a technical role, and now moving to more of a business development role. So I'm responsible for tailoring solutions for our existing customers and for our new customers. And that includes business continuity solutions as well, which we'll be discussing today, as well as a variety of others. So I'm sure everyone saw from the email invite and the LinkedIn posts and my calls, everyone will be getting a free $25 Uber Eats voucher today at the end of the presentation for attending as well. So everyone can buy themselves lunch. We'll also be doing a Q&A at the end of the presentation. So there is a Q&A feature built into Zoom. If you can pop your questions in there as opposed to the regular chat. And once myself and Peter get to the end of the presentation, we'll happily take any questions. And my email will also be on the screen at the end of the presentation as well. So you're also more than welcome to pop an email through to myself with any questions that you have about the presentation or anything we talk about today as well. So a bit about IT Smart Solution for those of you who aren't familiar with us. We're a Sydney small business specialist MSP. We've been doing it for over 15 years, and we're really passionate about small business. So one of our core beliefs is that small business should have access to the same standard of IT as large business, and that having a smaller budget or less staff shouldn't be a constraint for your business. So this type of thing in the small business sector it's really our bread and butter. It's something that our whole team specializes in, and providing this webinar to you today is part of our commitment to small business. So a little bit about Datto and Peter, who I'll be handing over to in a moment here. So Datto they're a great partner of ours. They've been a partner of ours for many years now. They're an industry leader actually in a variety of services, not just business continuity, but across the entire IT landscape. Peter Eldon, as you can see on the screen there, and who's just turned his camera on, he's a senior channel development manager at Datto. He's spoken all over the country as well as online like he has today, and he's one of the best in the business. So I'm sure you'll all thoroughly enjoy what he has to say today. I'll hand over to you now, Peter.
Thank you very much, Joel. Thanks for those kind words. Bit of pressure, but we'll see how we go. As Joel said, I work at Datto as a senior channel development manager. So my role is traditionally would be going out in person and presenting at workshops and conferences and likes, and seeing you lovely people in person. Unfortunately, 2020 had different ideas on that one, and so I've been locked in this spare room for what feels like 100 years. I think it's a great initiative of Joel and the IT Smart Solutions team to offer that $25 Uber Eats voucher. So I hope everyone's got something to eat and get something that isn't too healthy, all right? You've got to look after yourselves. So what I want to do is talk a little bit about, as Joel said, business continuity and business resilience. And as Joel eloquently put that is putting forward the ability for you to have access to your data and to be able to trade through any event, be it a physical or virtual nature, large or small. And so what I want to do first off is tell you a little bit about Datto, because what we're asking you to do in the IT Smart Solutions team is to trust us with your data. And so we have to show that we're worthy of that trust. So we're a US-based company. We just actually went to an IPO in the US about 3 weeks ago, which was quite exciting. We're in every continent. There are people. And from an Australian standpoint, we have 2 data centers, one in Sydney and one in Melbourne. And that's important because what that means is all of our customers' data stays within Australian sovereignty. And that's very important from a compliance standpoint. We are 100% channel only. And what that means is that we don't deal directly with end customers. We only work with a group of businesses called a managed service provider, which is very much what the IT Smart Solutions teams are. And the reason for that's pretty simple. We are excellent at building technology and building business continuity solutions. The team at IT Smart Solutions are brilliant at understanding locally the needs of customers. So when you put that two together, you've got a multinational IT business that specifies in a particular area, and then you've got local support, understanding, and customer service that ties those two together. We've got over 1,700 staff. 70% of those guys are either building solutions or supporting them. So we're a very technical business. And we have over 400 petabytes of data under our protection globally. And that's being managed by over 150,000 devices out there in the fields, protecting our customers from downtime. And when we talk here, I'm going to talk about our technology, but I'm also going to talk about what's best practice in protecting our data and our customers' secure or privacy. Because technology is only part of the solution. You need to have a technology in hand with awareness of your team. So the first part of best practice in protecting your data is a firewall. And a firewall is a bit of equipment that sits on the edge of your network and basically separates from the internet to your internal network. And that firewall's job is to make sure that whoever comes into your network is meant to be there and aren't going to cause harm. And the best way I explain a firewall to non-technical people is to explain it. It's kind of like a bouncer at a nightclub, right? And he stands there on the door, and the job of the bouncer is to make sure whoever comes in the venue is going to behave themselves, should be in there and aren't going to cause any trouble. And that's very much what your firewall does for your business. The next one is a spam filter. Now, if we're all in the same room, I'd ask you guys who finds their spam filter annoying, and sometimes it picks up that things aren't spam. And all of you guys would say yes, and I'd say good. Because you want your spam filter to be wound up and to be a little bit stronger than you necessarily need. Because if it's picking up the every now and again something that isn't spam, it means it's definitely picking up the things that are spam and are bad actors. And it's a lot easier to be a little bit inconvenienced to have to go into a spam folder as opposed to start to recover from a major malware attack. Then server and endpoint antivirus. Now, this isn't something I need to spend a lot of time on. Everyone understands the need server and endpoint antivirus, but it's interesting to see is how we evolve. Is if you went back 5-10 years ago, people didn't really think you needed that or weren't aware of what it is. Now it's a given. Because what happens is as the bad guys change the way in which they attack us, and also as our reliance on data increases, then so much our responses to those risks. And speaking of that, an area of growth, and it's an area that I really recommend you have a chat to Joel and the team about, is around staff training and cybersecurity awareness. Because as I said, technology can only go part of the way. Technology will never be as good at protecting your data as an educated and motivated staff member keeping their eye out for strange and unusual activity. So when things come in and that person just sticking their head up over a cubicle and asking the person, hey, did you send me this email with an attachment? No, I didn't do that. Okay, let's have a look at that. So just being aware of that, looking at the styles of attacks that look at particular industries, and talking to your staff around their responsibilities around protecting data can really go a long way to helping you keeping your data secure. And then finally, a recent and easily recoverable copy of your data. And that's what we do at Datto. And what does that mean? It means that no matter what happens on site through a physical or virtual nature, you've always got a copy of your data that you can very quickly recover to and trade from while you fix that major problem in the background. Because when we talk to our managed service providers, so the guys like Joel and the team, we survey them every year, and they tell us that business continuity disaster recovery solution is the most important part of protecting their customers' data. Because everything else on this journey up the mountain is important, and it's critical to have them. So antivirus, as I said, employee training, patch management, these are all very important tools, but they're all preventative. They need to work 100% of the time. Whereas that business continuity solution is the only part of this that allows you to recover after an event. So it's the only one that it doesn't matter what happens before. We are in fact a time machine. We give you the ability to go back in time to before the event, before the fire, the flood, the malware attack, and recover your data there where it's still active and available, and unless you trade through that event. Now, how do we do that? Well, let me show you. So this is as technical as I'm going to get, and because it's as technical as I can get. So just give me a second and we'll show you exactly what we do here. So in conjunction with the IT Smart Solutions team and Joel's team, we put a physical piece of equipment into your premises. And it's important to note that your data and your customers' data lives in one of two places. It either lives on what we say on-premise, so in other words, in your offices, on servers in your offices, or in a data center that you control, or you've moved some of your data to the cloud. And by the cloud, I mean SaaS, services or software solutions, such as Office 365, Xero, Salesforce, things like that. And they're really the only two areas you can live, your data is living, on-prem, in the cloud. And I'm going to talk about how we protect both of those data. But this one here, what we're going to talk about is when you've got servers in your office or servers in a data center that you control. So what we do is with Joel's team is we put a physical piece of hardware into your premises. And that piece of hardware talks to all your critical infrastructure. So your physical servers, your virtual servers, your laptops, your PCs, whatever's important in you doing your day. And what we do is, as frequently as every 5 minutes, but best practice is every hour, we take a copy of that entire server or that PC, and we keep a copy on the Datto device. And so what we do is we take a snapshot of how that server looked at that particular point in time. And if you notice there, I didn't say a backup, because all a backup does is it takes a copy of your important files and folders, but it doesn't take anything that makes any of that stuff work. Whereas what we do is we take an entire snapshot, a copy of an entire server. So the operating system, the applications that you might be running, and your important files are in there as well. We keep a copy on the Datto device, and we use our own IP to push a copy of that data to our own cloud in, as I said, in Sydney and Melbourne. So from a DR standpoint, a disaster recovery standpoint, this is best practice. Because what you've got is 3 copies of your data, 2 on site, and 1 in an air-gapped area in the cloud. And that's great for DR. But as we said, and as Joel said, we're talking about business continuity and disaster recovery. So where the smarts are in our solution and where we differentiate ourselves from opposition is that in that device, we have redundant CPU and memory. So it's basically like having a whole group of servers on the sideline ready to come on if someone gets injured. And so what happens is, let's say you have an event on your site. Let's say it's just a micro event that affects one server. And that server in your office could be running your ERP, your CRM, a practice management software, whatever it is. And that server dies. The motherboard could blow up, the power supply stop working, whatever it is. Now, in a backup or a DR situation, you are now offline until you can fix that server. So suddenly you're working, it stops working, you ring Joel and the team, they log on and go, okay, we've got a problem here. Again, traditionally, your staff's got to sit around and wait until that problem can be resolved. And that could be them rolling a truck to get a warranty job or whatever that is. Now, depending on what the incident is, that means you could be down for a couple of hours or, as we'll see later on, a couple of weeks. And while you're down, you can't work on that particular application. However, with a Datto solution in place, a business continuity solution in place, it's very different. So when that server dies, Joel and his team can instantly virtualize, start up the copy of that server that we have on the Datto device. And then your team, your staff then work from the Datto device on that application, on those files, doing whatever they do is at your critical business. Now, while that's happening, we're still snapshotting and backing up the rest of your environment, and we're still copying and backing up the server that's virtualized on the Datto device. So we don't lose any data, and we haven't no loss of data while you're recovering. So then Joel and his team would then maybe roll a truck to get a warranty job or whatever it is to get this server fixed. While he does that, you're still working, your staff are still happy and doing their jobs. Once it's fixed, Joel and his team would use the Datto device to rebuild that server on the fly and then cut everyone back across to it, unbeknownst that was even a problem. So a true business continuity solution. But let's pretend you're having a really bad day. So it's not just one server you lose, but you lose your entire environment. You might lose your entire site. So there could be a fire on the site, there could be damage to the building, whatever it is. So what's happened there is you've lost all of your servers and you've lost the Datto device. So in that scenario, Joel and his team can instantly virtualize whatever was on the Datto device in the Datto cloud, and then provide that back to you and your staff via a VPN or an RDP connection or something like that. So what would happen is you've got a major event on site. You might send everyone home. You might send them to a serviced office. Joe fires up your servers in the cloud and you guys still trade. You can still answer your customers' inquiries. You can still bill. You can do everything else that you need. Now, you're still having a bad day, right? You've still got problems, but access to your applications and your critical data isn't one of them. So you can still trade through that event. You can do that in our Datto cloud for 30 days free of charge while the team resolve your issue. We would then send you out a new Datto device. Joel and his team would use that to rebuild your entire environment and then cut you back over from the Datto. So again, a true business continuity solution rather than a backup or a DR situation, which would see you offline for multiple hours, days, or weeks. And all of that is backed up by 24-hour, 365-day support. Because what we're offering here and to the IT Smart Solutions teams and to you guys is an outcome. So it's a service, not software or hardware. And that's a very different differentiator, because when you're delivering an outcome, then the service around that is significantly more than if you're selling licensing and hardware. And so what that means is that we've got these support crews in the US who will support Joel and his team and you guys through whatever the event is. So an event that's just affected you guys, or an event that's affected multiple customers in an area, or worst case, an event that's affected lots of customers and Joel and IT Smart Solutions as well. Because if you think about a physical event like a flood or a fire or a power outage, it's going to have to be suburb or citywide. So it's going to be Joel and his team who have got trouble getting to work or having power and the likes. So having a backup, the Datto team in a completely different country in custom built solutions means we can support him and you guys through whatever happens, be it physical or virtual. Now, these are what these guys look like, the devices. They're not that impressive. They just look like servers. But what is good to note is that we go from 500 gig to 100 TB. And so what that means is we can size a solution no matter how big or small your data needs are. And it's important that we look at that, because we're really starting to have a conversation with customers where we say, we really need to rethink backup. And we need to rethink about why we have backup, what the risks are, and what is acceptable downtime on our business. Because when we think of disasters, we think of kind of the biblical ones. We think of the ones we see on the TV a lot, fires and floods and that type of thing. And, granted, 2020, we've had our fair share. I'm a little bit nervous about the season finale next month, but hopefully, we're not seeing a lot of these physical major disasters in a year in our business. When they do hit, a business continuity solution and strategy is absolutely critical. And that will be the difference of some businesses going out of business and some businesses being able to trade through an event like this. But these aren't the style of attacks or incidents that are going to cause downtime on a day-to-day business to most businesses. And if we were all in the same room, I'd ask you guys to try and guess what the biggest impact could be to your business. And anyone who was put the hand up and said, staff, people, correct. Unfortunately, the biggest disaster that's probably going to hit your business is going to be your staff. But that's a little bit unfair, right? We can't really blame the staff, because our staff and us as people need to be online. We need to be getting emails. We need to be opening up attachments. We need to be speaking to people 24/7. But unfortunately, because of the scenario we live in these days, we can't trust the information that's coming back to us. So if we look at the biggest cost of downtime to businesses in ANZ or APAC, human error and ransomware make up 96% of all those downtime incidents. And when we talk about a downtime incident, that sounds quite clinical. What we're talking about is a business not being able to trade. So a business that's lost access to its critical information, and now they're scrambling to recover that to then be able to answer customer queries, pay bills, whatever it is that they need to do. So 96% of those incidents are caused by human error and ransomware combined, or one or the other. Hardware failure. Look, hardware's getting pretty good these days, right? We're not really seeing that much problem with them, and there's a fair bit of redundancy backed up in those. Natural disasters, as we said, when they hit, they have massive impacts and can send businesses under, but hopefully you're not seeing a lot of them. But let's have a bit of a deep dive around that ransomware and malware, because that is a significant area of concern and of loss of downtime. So let's have a little bit of a history of malware. So the first crypto attack, or the first malware attack we saw in Australia, was in 2013. And what would happen is you'd be working on your computer in 2013, and then all of a sudden everything would freeze. And a big Australian Federal Police logo would appear on your screen, and underneath it, it said, "You've been doing something illegal or immoral on your computer, and we're going to give you a $1,500 fine." And that fine, supposedly fine, was so basic, it was actually the way you paid it was a money order to India. But you'd be amazed on how many people actually paid that fine, because no one had ever seen anything like that before. And also because of the internet, lots of people are doing something illegal or immoral on there, right? So a lot of people thought that checked out. So lots and lots of people paid this money to an Indian, to a money order to India, thinking it was a fine. And that was a fundamental change for our industry. And so the way we look at it in the industry, any of the companies that look after data integrity or data protection, that date there, we see anything before that is we class as BC, before crypto. And anything after that date is AC, after crypto. And that's it, because that date was a watershed moment. And this is probably the biggest thing I would recommend you take away from this is this point here. If your backup technology or strategy is from on or around that date, then it's not equipped to protect you after that date, because this was a game changer. So us as an industry, everything up until this date, we were thinking about problems in a physical nature. So, fires, floods, hardware failure, power supplies going out. We weren't thinking as an industry about building solutions to protect your data from criminal enterprises trying to steal your data away and hold it ransom. Now, needless to say, after this date, that's pretty much all we've been thinking about. And we're very much now put up solutions to protect that. But that there was a game changer. And so what I'd say to you is it's important to talk to Joel and his team and ask the question, is our backup strategy and technologies equipped to protect us on A, the importance of our data, and B, the importance of our ability to get access to that and trade. And this is what it looks like. So if you've seen one of these, you've had a bad day. This is a note that appears on your screen once your systems have been shut down to a malware attack. And it's important to understand that these are organizations who are doing this. They're not fat kids in their mom's basement. This is highly organized and very well-funded criminal enterprises. And in some cases, in a lot of cases, it's actually enemy states. So what we're seeing is, particularly in APAC, which unfortunately gets a lot of these attacks, you've got enemy states, so different enemy countries and the intelligence services for different enemy countries who during the day are attacking government installations, defense contractors and Department of Defense. And then at night, those individuals are moonlighting with the same weapons grade technology to attack small and medium business. And that's very difficult to keep ahead of that game, right? If you're in an arms race with an enemy country, that's very difficult for you to stay abreast of that and also just keep focus on your business. And that's why for me, it's very important to engage trusted advisors, to people like Joel and the IT Smart Solutions team, And just as you would go to an accountant for financial advice, a lawyer for legal advice, go to IT specialists for advice on how you can protect and safeguard your data, access to it, and also your customers' privacy. And, you know, these guys are very innovative. They're coming up with new and interesting ways to attack your data. You know, this is quite an interesting one. So this is a variant we saw a few years ago. And so what happened is it would encrypt all your machines and you'd get this note. And what this note says is you can restore your files the fast and easy way, which is to pay 1 Bitcoin and they'll give you your data back. Or you can do it the nasty way, which is if you use this link here to get 3 other people infected, they'll give you your data back, which is kind of terrifying, right? They're kind of running Amway for malware. And what I would recommend you guys do as a bit of an exercise is whatever industry you're in, just do a quick Google search, right? So just when you get a little bit of time, do accountants malware Australia, or even, you know, accountants malware Sydney, and see what hits you get up on that. And like, you know, I'm not saying just do that to scare you. It's more so to be aware of the patterns and the styles and risks or attacks that are being successful in your industry, to again, to go back and educate your staff about what to be aware of. Because as I said, these guys are not amateurs. These guys are professional organizations that, you know, there's one of them called WannaCry, CryptoLocker, that was doing over $1 million a day US in Bitcoin payments through ransomware. So that's over $365 million from one variant. So these guys are constantly looking at how they can attack better. They can look at what campaigns work successfully in certain industries, and then they'll go harder in those industries. So by looking and seeing if you're in accounting or legal, well, okay, they use this style of attack and it was successful, you can help educate your staff and yourselves to better respond. And this is what I just done quickly, just a couple of days ago. It talks about coming into healthcare was a particular area of focus. Tertiary education is a good one. Private schools, they see, because it's not only the financial loss that these guys operate on, but it's a reputational loss as well. Engineering firms, and this is an interesting slide because this gives you an idea of the styles of industry that are being attacked. And this is from an Australian report as well, which I'll go into a little bit more detail. And what we see there is education, professional services, health, constructions, communications. And again, you don't need to be a rocket scientist, right? They're aiming for businesses that have a heavy reliance on IT and systems, would have a reputational loss by losing that data, and they believe are an area can try and pay. And, you know, this is a very sobering point. I'm sure all of you have got someone in your business that will click on anything. I am that person, unfortunately, for Datto. And just a couple of other examples that you might have seen in the news. So Toll Transport had a particularly significant business interruption when they got a malware attack about 2 months ago. They were down on and off for around 5 weeks. And this had a massive impact on their business. And the way I saw that over in the news was Toll Transport were contracted to deliver Nespresso coffee. We have that, and you know, suddenly we couldn't get coffee for weeks. And it was because they just couldn't ship anything. They didn't know, they couldn't go into any of their systems to book jobs, send jobs, track where things were. Now, Toll lost that contract for Nespresso because of that. And they also had significant impact on their reputation and their finances for lack of revenue and lost contracts. And obviously they're quite a large business, but the flip side is a large business has quite a large IT team in there to be looking at these systems. And if you went and talked to those IT team before this event, you know, they would have very confidently told you that they had a DR plan in place. And they did, right? They had a DR plan. They had a copy of their data, but it took them 5 weeks to fight the bad guys, remove it off servers, and rebuild those servers. And unfortunately, the way that the bad guys worked, they didn't get rid of all of that in there. And so when they started to bring their servers back up, they got hit again. And that's the difference between a business continuity solution and a DR solution. a business continuity solution would allow them to trade through that event, through those reserve servers effectively on the Datto, while they then fully removed and recovered on their production servers. And so my argument would be, if it takes you 5 weeks to recover, you're still in a disaster. And so that's why business continuity is important. Another one, and I'm going to be cheeky on this shout out, is Lion Nathan. They got an attack about 2 months ago also, which saw them offline and did cause a delay in the production of the famous and glorious Forex beer, who are the sponsors of the triumphant Maroons team for the 2020 State of Origin. I know most of you guys in Sydney. I'm in Queensland. It did feel good to say that. Apologies to everyone. Another one was just popped up, which was quite interesting. This came back into my feed from last year. This is a private heart hospital in Melbourne, Cabinary Hospital. This was last November, so it's their first anniversary of this. They got hit. They had backups. They had a company that was meant to be looking after those backups. They got hacked. The bad guy came in, removed their AV, antivirus, deleted the backups, encrypted everything, and then hit them with a $60,000 ransom. They had 15,000 private patient records encrypted and lost, and it had severe impact on surgeries and clearly a major reputational loss to that business. But also financially, it's going to take them 2 years, 2 full-time staff to recover that if they don't pay that $60,000 ransom. Now, let's talk about that, because that's a good point as well, right? Is, well, why don't we just pay the ransom? And this is an interesting survey we did again last year of Joel and MSPs, was talking about the cost of the ransom compared to the cost of downtime. So the average cost of recovering from a malware attack, if you don't have BCDR, is 23 times more than what the bad guys are charging you for a ransom. So let me say that again. It costs you 23 times more to recover from the malware attack than if you just paid a ransom. And so if you look at that, the average ransom cost in 2019 was nearly $6,000 US, right? 5,900. The average cost of recovering from a malware attack without BCDR was $141,000. Now, how did the businesses work that out? Well, you look at, let's say you're down for 5 days while you recover from that attack. You've got your lack of revenue and you're selling for those 5 days. You've still got your staff costs. You've still got your build and lease. You've got all your sunk costs and leases. When you add that up and you divide it out by the average businesses, that was $141,000. So I know a number of you are probably thinking, well, all right, well, maybe I just paid a ransom. It's a lot easier to pay $6K US than lose $141,000 US. Granted, that is good logic. But the problem is, if you pay a ransom, you've done 3 things. And the first thing to be aware of is you're not guaranteed they will give you your data back. To be honest, they do. They do that a fair bit because that is their business model. And these guys run call centers to help you figure out how to buy a Bitcoin. They do lots and lots of things around this to try and make it easier for you to do because that's their business model. But you're not guaranteed they will. But the 3 things you are guaranteed you've done if you paid a ransom, well, the first one is you've told them that you exist. Because a lot of this is just kind of spam. They just send it out and they don't really know they've got someone on a hook until you message them to say, oh, I've got your message. Secondly, you've told them that your data is important to you. And thirdly, you've told them that you've got money. So if you do pay that ransom, you are guaranteed you will be hit again, sooner rather than later, because they put you on a deep pay list, and that's something that they'll try and hit harder again. Also, on top of that, that is clearly a data breach, and there are some compliance and reporting that you must do on that. And we'll get into that in a little bit. So we've spoken about the different styles of ways we can lose data through physical events like fires and floods and outages. And we've spoken about the virtual attacks through hacks and malware. And we've talked about things that happen on site. Now I want to just briefly touch on your data that's in the cloud. So your SaaS services like 365 and G Suite. So at Datto, as you said, we provide an outcome, which is access to your data, no matter where it lives and no matter where of the event. So because of that, we provide a service where we back up G Suite and Office 365. And what happens is we take a snapshot of your entire tenancy every 8 hours, and we keep that separate to Microsoft or Google, available to you in case of an incident. And when we copy that data, we don't only just take your mail, but we take your OneDrive, your SharePoint, your Teams, everything, all the data that you now have up in that cloud. We protect that. Now, I know a number of you are probably sitting there going, well, hang on a second, why do I need to back that up? It's in the cloud, it's getting backed up, right? Actually, no, it's not. So any of your SaaS providers that you guys use have different requirements around protection of data. And you as the data owner need to do or have a responsibility to check to see what your responsibilities are in protecting that data. Because what the vendors do is they work on a joint responsibility license and agreement. And very simply what that means is they're on a hook to do a few things and you're on a hook to do a few things. When we look at what their responsibilities are, and we'll use Microsoft as an example here, they're responsible is for making sure you can get access to the cloud. So you can get into 365. And they'll make sure that they've built the data center in a good place. They've got lots of redundant servers. They've got lots of power coming in, lots of internet, and they didn't build it in a bushfire area. However, you as the data owner are responsible for protecting data held inside the cloud. And what do you need to protect it from? Well, human error, fat fingers, people just deleting stuff accidentally and then coming back and said, oh, we lost a major file and we need that for a tender from 3 months ago. You're not able to get that back from Microsoft. Malicious insiders is an area of we see quite a bit. This could be, you let someone go from the business. 3 months later, you realize there's some discrepancies. They've deleted all their inbox, and now you need to try and recover that to see what's going on. We've seen fraud perpetuated that way, where people are changing invoices and trying to hide things. And by having those backups to be able to show what's happened, and it's seen some successful prosecutions. And then the two biggest areas of data loss in the cloud is external hackers and viruses and malware. Because as I said, the bad guys aren't amateurs. These are professional criminal gangs. And so not only are they making money, but they're looking at where they're going to make their money from in the future. And they're very innovative. So as businesses move to cloud-based services, the bad guys move their attacks to cloud-based services. And when we look at further verification on what we're saying here, if we look at Microsoft terms and conditions, and if any of you guys are having trouble nodding off to sleep at night, I fully recommend reading the Microsoft terms and conditions. It will get you to sleep very quickly. This is their terms and conditions. I think this is page 7,952. Joel will be able to confirm that. Just kidding, I don't know. And what it says here is Microsoft have no liability for the deletion of data held in the site. And G Suite says something similar as well. Google have no responsibility for liability of data. They also go on to say it's recommended that you keep a air-gapped, so a separated copy of your data away from them that you can recover from in case of incident. And as I said, these are real incidents because we see 1 in 3 businesses have lost data in cloud from accidental deletion or from a malware attack. And so I do encourage you guys, there are different styles of backups for cloud services, but I would encourage you to have a conversation with your trusted advisor, so Joel and the team, about where your data is, how easily it can be recovered, and what happens in an event like we've just spoke about. So we've done on-premise, we've done in the cloud, we've talked about malware and ransomware, but I just want to give you a bit of another insight on how hackers work and how they can use the information that we're putting out there day to day against us. And this is a bit of a unique one. So We're going to talk about this gentleman here. And this gentleman here worked in the disaster notification department in Hawaii. And we know he works in Hawaii because he's got a Hawaiian shirt on. That's the uniform. That's what they do. And this is a post from a gentleman a couple of years ago, and this is what he put up on his social media. This is that typical social media, I'm at work kind of post, and he's very important. But I don't know if you guys remember, but about 3 years ago in January, the whole island of Hawaii received a text message on every single phone at the same time that said, ballistic missile threat inbound to Hawaii. Seek immediate shelter. This is not a drill. Now, I know that because this is a screenshot from my phone when I was in Hawaii. And this came through at 8:10 in the morning to the whole island. And I was sat on the toilet when this came through. And might I tell you, that is definitely the best place to be when that message sets up on your phone. Now, back to this gentleman here. He ran the department that sent that message out. Now, it took 35 to 40 minutes from when we received that message for the whole island to receive a second message to say that that was an accident and we weren't all going to die in a nuclear fireball. Now, the government have never said, the US government have never said why that message went out. But this picture was put up on his social media about a week before that incident. And I'm wondering if anyone, and again, if we were live, I'd ask you guys to see if you can spot a problem with what he put up on social media. And I'm sure you guys will see he's got his name tagged there, and that's a good point because you can see something there, but there's something else that's glaring that caused a major problem here. Yes. So if you look at his screen, there's a username and password. Now, again, the US government's not said what happened there, but this gentleman is no longer at that facility that sent that out. And that's a good example of how the bad guys can use social media to build a profile, to get information, which is what we call phishing, to get us to do something we wouldn't do, which might be to send $20,000 invoice payment because they've pretended to be a CEO and say that I've got a Russian invoice through because they've found out how to get his email. They've realized he's on holiday because of checking out, her husband's Facebook or whatever it is, and have put that together and have tried to trick you into doing something. Or they trick you into giving access to them allowed to do nasty things as they did here to this gentleman. So again, a good example of where staff training and awareness of our roles and responsibilities, not only at work, but outside of work, can help us protect our data and reduce downtime and risk. Okay, you guys have been very good and very patient. We're in the last round here. And I just want to very quickly touch on a little bit around the Data Breach Notification Act and our roles and responsibilities in Australia. So I'm sure you guys are aware, but the Australian government brought out some legislation in February of 2018. And this was an addition to the Privacy Act. And basically what it is rules and responsibilities for Australian businesses for when they have a data breach and when they have a hacker or a malware attack. And what it tells the businesses of what they should be doing to take reasonable steps to protect that data, what you have to do when you're breached, and how you tell the government, and also more importantly, how you have to tell all your customers that might have been affected. Now, with a malware attack where all your data has been affected, what that basically means is you need to tell all your customers of that potential data loss. And how does that look? It looks like you have to email everyone. You might have to put big red letters on your website telling everyone, and you may even in some cases have to put ads in papers telling people about that data breach. Obviously, that has significant reputational loss to a business. There are also significant fines for individuals and companies that don't A, tell, and B, take reasonable steps to protect that data. Now, what are reasonable steps? Very much what we spoke about earlier on, that firewall, the antivirus, the staff training, all that stuff, the BCDR solutions, all that stuff puts you in a position that if you are still breached, the commission looks at it and goes, well, look, these guys are trying to make sure that didn't happen. And more importantly, will stop you having a breach. because something like antivirus and all those type of things, they're going to stop it getting in. And then with the business continuity solution, as we saw, it gives you the ability to go back in time before the attack, delete all the servers off it, so you don't negotiate, you don't speak to them, you go back in time before the event and recover there, which means you haven't had a breach then. But the other good thing about that site is it gives you up-to-date information on the types of businesses and the styles of attack. And I do recommend you guys have a jump on there when you get some spare time. Just look at your industries, just look at how it's affecting them. So as we see here, this further endorses what I said around malware and human error causing much of the outages. And when we look here, we get to see some interesting trends around the styles of attack. So if we look at here, the yellow and the ransomware and the pink, they're all hacking and malware attacks. When we look at I guess that's a blue or an aqua. I'm male, so I don't only do primary colors. But what that one's talking about is that phishing tracks where they're tricking people into giving access or information, which was very much like our friend in Hawaiian shirt. And again, up to the minute information around breaches, style of industries, and types of attack. Healthcare, finance, education, insurance, again, all those professional services. And we see there that human error and malware were right up there as part of the reasons for those. Couple of who's who on some businesses that have been breached in the last quarter of 2019. Unfortunately, if you've been putting information into these businesses, be it passwords for loyalty programs or something like that, then chances are your data has been breached. Now, I'm sure in a couple of years ago, well, I don't really care if my loyalty password at Bunnings for my snags has been compromised, and yep, that's a good point. But here's the kicker. As humans, we are more likely to use the same or a similar username and password at multiple sites. And so there's a good chance that the Bunnings snag loyalty password you used is very similar or the same as your Salesforce, your ERP, your LinkedIn, or whatever it is. And the bad guys use that. And so what they do is they garnish passwords from weaker sites, and then they attack harder sites to get access in there. And again, that's why it's important to deal with trusted advisors like Joel and the team to find out what you need to do from a compliance and a security standpoint to then enable you guys to do what it is you guys do best in your business. So with that, I am going to bring Joel back on to go through some questions. Joel, are you there? Yes, he is. Look at that.
Thanks very much, Peter. Yeah, that was a fantastic presentation.
Thank you very much. It was great to be here.
Yeah, thanks very much. So do we have any questions? I can't see any in the Q&A just yet.
There's a couple here. So there's a couple I've got here, which I can go through. So there's one here in relation to can the Datto get crypto? So in other words, and it's a really good question. So what the question is, if there's malware or crypto on the servers and we're backing up every hour, does that mean there's now malware on the Datto device? And are we in trouble? That's a good question. So yes and no is the answer, but know that you're not in trouble. So what happens is, on those Datto devices, we're taking snapshots of the server every hour. And so in theory, if there's malware on that server, then when we take a copy, there's a copy of that malware on the Datto device. However, that's what we like call a flat file. It's not active, it's not live. Think of it like a frozen sample. And so that can't then affect any other snapshots, so it can't affect the server and the Datto. But more importantly, we run malware detection software on the Datto devices. And what that's doing is it's looking for strange or unusual file activity, so we can very quickly highlight that it could be a breach, which allows Joel's team to give you a much quicker response as to how quickly they can recover. So even if there is malware on a server that's been backed up, Joel's team would just delete that server copy off the device and recover from a previous one that wasn't affected. So that's a very good question. So thank you for that one. Joel, we've got one more around how long do we keep the data? So do you want to explain about how we hold the data for life on the Datto devices?
Yeah, that's right. So the Datto devices, and correct me if I'm wrong here on this, Peter. So you've got the every hour snapshots, like you said. I believe, so it's sort of done in increments. So up to, I believe, the first year, then beyond a year, it's no longer daily. It's then once a month. So as you go further back in time, the interval gets longer.
Yes.
But
so basically what it's doing is the device on site, you'll generally have about 6 weeks worth of data on there, right? Because you're not going to, if you've got a major problem, you want to recover from your most recent backup, right? So you've got that on site. And then after that, and then what happens is it's also pushing it to the Datto cloud every, a couple of hours or whatever it is that you've set up. So you've got a copy on site, you've got a copy on the cloud. So what happens is after the 6 weeks on the site, you would then remove that off there because you've always got in the cloud. And what we do is in the cloud is we will keep a copy of the data every month on there after those 8 weeks. So once it's moved up there, effectively, you've got a version of your data from your very first backup. And so in that case, let's say in 5 years' time, you could be being audited, or you might have litigation or something in place, and you go back to Joel and say, okay, look, we need to get access to those files from January of 2020. If you were a customer of us at the time, Joel can actually open up that instance of January 2020 and make that available to you or your litigators or your compliance people to get access to all that information. And that's super powerful because in every industry, we have requirements on us on how long we need to keep our data. And, in health and education, some of it's life, right? You're going to have to keep it for life. And it's very difficult to keep on top of that data and keep compliance. And so with a Datto solution, it means, you have a compliance killer there. It answers that question straight away, which is we have an infinite compliance or an infinite data retention, which means we can always recover whenever we need to. Brilliant. I don't see any more questions there, Joel. We must have done a great job at covering all possible outcomes.
I hope so.
So next steps, can you like, if the guys have went, look, that English guy just yelled a lot about a lot of information, how do we figure out what's going on and what we need to do? What should the guys on the call do, Joel?
Absolutely. So look, like I said at the start of the webinar, obviously there's my email address there, joel.portsmouth@IT Smart Solutions. You're more than welcome to contact me with any queries whatsoever. I've also got our website there, itsmartsolutions.com.au. And there's a little hyperlink there, but you can also find it on our website. We have an actionable IT security guide. It's a PDF that you can download. It's got some great steps there that you can immediately look at straight off the website and go through each point and go, right, do we have this? Do we have that? It's totally free and it's got some great steps. So I'd implore everyone to go onto the site, download that, take a look at how your business shapes up and how many of these items on the list do we have and don't we have? And if there's some that you don't have or you need help in setting up or questions about, we can absolutely help with that. I think Pete did a fantastic job. Like you said, you're a little concerned about the season finale. It's COVID. Extremely volatile still. My
money's on aliens. I'm absolutely got money on aliens by December 31, 2020. That's my call.
If any year it was going to happen, it was absolutely.
It's this one, right?
It's warming up as well. Where we're getting into bushfire season again. I've read an article yesterday that the New South Wales state government budget has cut. Firefighters' budget again. You're taking a really dangerous gamble not having a BCDR, a business continuity and disaster recovery plan going into 2021. And like I said earlier, I've been in a technical role in the business, and so I've seen customers that have been, miraculously saved by a BCDR plan. We had a customer at the beginning of the year, office top to toe, flooded in knee-deep water, everything completely insurance write-off. They had a BCDR plan. We were able to get them into an alternate workspace and back up and working in moments. I've also seen, unfortunately, the nature of the beast is I've also seen the other side of businesses coming to us who didn't have a BCDR plan. And that, as you said, Pete, can be quite a bad day. That can be quite disastrous, which is why we call it disaster recovery.
That's exactly right. So we're coming up to the hour, which is brilliant. I love it when we're efficient on time. I'd like to thank Joel and the team at IT Smart Solutions for inviting us along to come along to that. I'd particularly like to thank all the attendees who have stayed on and listened to us, and we really do appreciate time. As I said, there's a lot to take out of this. The simplest thing I would say is managed service providers and the team at IT Smart Solutions can navigate you through all of this and make sure you guys are operational and your data is safe. Please recommend you reach out to them. Everyone have a lovely day. Thank you very much for your time and attendance. See you.
Thanks very much, guys. Speak soon. Thank you. Cheers.